Ruler School is brought to you by Happy Little Hug Factory and these amazing patrons. Extra special thank you to guest lecturer patrons Brody Harris and Lance Albertson. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Teacher's Lounge, your favorite ever live Forcible podcast featuring myself as Jeremy Franklin, Jeremy Franklin, Ryan Miles,
as Ryan Miles,
Brandan Bremont,
voiced by Brandan Bremont,
and Frank Klosser,
voiced by actor redacted. No one would admit that they took the role of Frank Klosser.
Fair enough. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, super appreciative of you guys all tuning in for the live. If you want to support the channel and what we do, go ahead and check out all the links below for merch, the playmat, the Patreon, all that kind of cool stuff. Help support what we do here on the channel. But enough about that. Let's talk Force Will. Specifically, let's talk about how to improve at Force Will, and specifically, and then today we're talking about understanding deck weaknesses and how to use that to your advantage both in building decks and while you are playing the deck. So Ryan, you had brought this topic kind of to bear in our little planning session. So kind of where do you want us to start with it?
I want to start with the fact that I brought the topic last week, so Bremont can go ahead and introduce this one. Ta-da!
It's a fantastic topic because it really is the crux of how to approach a metagame. So when you talk about a deck that's very good, that's dominant, that's the top of standings, and you want to approach how can we get a favorable matchup at this deck, you really need to look at what it's doing, at what points in the game it's strong, and what things it has trouble dealing with, and then you can jam all that together and hopefully get something that beats that deck. I would really love to say that this is something that we get to do and take advantage of all the time in Force Will, but sadly, Force Will is very good at making decks that have no weaknesses. And so in some way, this discussion is also going to be able to lead into kind of what we talked about last week, like how to design better sets that give us the opportunity to see weaknesses in decks. But from a fundamental standpoint, the biggest thing that we're going to be talking about is the concept of going under and going over, which are the two big ways to beat a deck. In general, and this is in broad terms, you want to either be one step faster than a deck or much slower than a deck are kind of the two ways to approach it. You don't want to be just barely slower than a deck or on top of it in terms of speed. And this is just one angle by which you can approach a deck. But so like if you have a mid-range deck, you want to be playing an aggressive deck that lets you get on board before they do and kind of beat them. But if they're playing an aggressive deck, you want to go the other direction. You want to be much slower, be completely reactive, stop their aggression, and then win in a superior late game. And that's just one way to approach it based on speed. And then we'll talk about kind of another way to do it. But is that a good way to introduce it, Ryan? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
That's way better than I could have ever done. I threw you on the spot, and I'm like, he's going to throw it back to me. I'm going to have to sit here and pick my nose while I think of an intro. But that was phenomenal. Claps all around. That was good.
I would add one addendum to that, and that's sort of on some of the issues Force of Will has had overall. And that it's not just that like they've built decks that have no weaknesses. It's felt more to me like they've consistently built decks whose weaknesses are the mirror. So, for example, Time Spinning Witch is an easy example. Its biggest issue is something like, and like this is where we've seen like some decks that come close, and those are decks that have very cheap interaction with its big things, which is in this format just Lorite, and then the ability to go underneath them so that they're under pressure. Because even if you can Lorite them, if you let them go long enough, they will just eventually have the interaction to play through yours and then hit you with something big anyway. And they're playing some of the biggest things in the format. And so that's why like decks like Chimimi have tried to go good at them, and why like Time Spinning Witch is sort of the best thing around is that Time Spinning Witch is hitting them with this fast, medium to low cost resonator in the 7 Disciples, while they have Lorite, which is also making their Disciples better to interact with their opponent.
I do want to piggyback on that, just kind of like looking at the history of card design in Force of Will and how really good they are at printing answers. When Leviathan was a problem, they had Death Scythe, and it's like, all right, well, what decks want to play Death Scythe? Because Leviathan is this card that gives your ruler swiftness, but also enables it to like pump your J ruler and do more damage. So clearly you want to play a J ruler focused deck when you play Leviathan. So what does Death Scythe do besides say 0 mana counter Leviathan? Well, it also pumps your J-Ruler, so you might as well put it in a J-Ruler deck. Oh, look, now I'm playing 4 Leviathan because I'm a J-Ruler deck, and I'm playing 4 Death Scythe to beat the other Leviathan decks. Next iteration was Reflect Refrain was a problem, so they played Black Moonbeam to beat Reflect Refrain. Well, what ruler has the easiest time flipping itself back down to dodge Black Moonbeam while their opponent's tapped out? Oh, it's Reflect Refrain. So now the problem is like facilitating the answer. Then they got super lazy, printed Fair Spell, which counters Fair Spell, and at that point they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna put the answer and the card in the same card instead of making it like tailored to the same archetype. And then you got Lorite, which counters Lorite. So it's just kind of like
we had Otherworld Dreams Severing Winds, and so like Otherworld Severing Winds prevented anyone from playing spells. Well, that's 2 spells that you have to play for that combo. So what's the best way to counter those free counter spells? With your own free counter spells. So now everyone has to play 4 Otherworld for
yeah, I think the problem is that the Force of Will in general has really, when it boils down to it, is like the answers are always within the threat is the problem. And so like Force of Will has had format after format after format where it has really been about mirror breaking, which has led to some very interesting deck design. But when you have format after format after format of mirror breaking, you're just like, okay, I'm tired of this. Like, who remembers when it was just Fox and it was, here's how you win Fox. Flip first and then activate second for the rest of the game. Okay, congrats. That's how you win, and that's how you win the game. Like, there wasn't really anything else you could do outside of it. Like, that was the weakness, was just don't activate. The weakness of Fox was activating first when you're both Fox. It's not a weakness.
The caveat is, like, there have been some very creative, like, reactions to mirror game metas.
Oh, yeah,
we've always seen people come up with something that just, like, really does take the deck in a completely different direction that really does find that almost silver bullet that comes out on top. You think back to Fox, like, Aaron Miles took Abdul out of the deck, and for some reason that was good because everyone was trying so hard to beat Abdul that he was just like, I'm not gonna like make those cards in your deck dead. And then like once the engine gets going, like Abdul kind of dies off anyway. So like cutting that card, just like that was like the first instance that I can think of where like the mirror breaker started, like mirrors started getting broken in creative ways. Scheherazade didn't really have anything like
by the end we had like as Scheherazade players started to have to pare down on Lorites because they had limited effectiveness in the mirror. We had no page start popping up because suddenly it couldn't be answered as cleanly, and then it was a clean multi for 1.
Yeah, that was like the very end of the Scheherazade format after like fucking.
I would also add to, like,
yeah.
I would also add to Brandon's like description is like you were very much going like, okay, where do you want to be positioned to beat things? But like another way to approach like your deck's weaknesses is if you know, for example, if you're trying to beat something and you know that your weakness is in the mirror, you can have cards that very specifically invalidate the opponent so that you're both operating on this very even game, and you have like a subset of answers that can put you like gain much more than one card normally would. Or are like working on an axis that may like this is where you'll tend to get very like specific answers like the null page we were talking about, and that they sort of like you attempt to take what is otherwise a mirror and like give you something that significantly changes the rate of play.
Yeah. And so to kind of go back to what Brandon was originally talking about in terms of like, so how do we implement this, right? So assuming, so like going into a hypothetical scenario, we're going into a meta where there's say the 3 top deck, like we're going into a blind meta. Let's say the time spinning witch doesn't exist, whatever, but like there's deck X that's doing really well, and you're trying to go into testing. And I think what a key thing to kind of go off of what Brandon is talking about is when you're building a deck, and I've done this in testing before, and trying to find out what is quote unquote the pivotal turn for the like deck X that you're trying to beat. And like, and I say this in the sense of when you identify what that pivotal turn is, then you start to get a really good sense of like whether or not you need to be the faster or the much slower deck. And I think that is a type of testing that maybe people aren't necessarily doing, but like in doing that, if you could, like I've done testing with Paul where he and I have both sat down and played like 5 or 6 or 7 games on a deck that we're like not super familiar with, but then once we start to get some reps in with it, we're saying, so this deck is really trying to go off on this turn. Like this is the turn where it's pretty consistently going off. This is the turn that it wants to be. And then if we're trying to beat it, then we can start kind of experimenting about like, okay, so if it's trying to go off here, where do we want to go off? And that actually is really important to like figure that out, because you know it gives you a sense of, I say it in sense of two factors. One, it gives you a better sense of just how to play against the deck and how to deck build against it. But also, two, I think it can actually inform your decisions in terms of when you're actually playing a match. And we've talked about this before in previous podcasts of people who play the game out thinking there's some magical out to it, and they kind of eat their own clock. But I think if you have a understanding in this concept of like when a deck is trying to go off, like you're gonna make an understanding when your deck is trying to do it versus theirs, you have a better sense of when a game becomes unwinnable, and you can probably start shaving off a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there off of your times, and having more time to play more games, because you'll know when is the time to be like, I did not go off in time, they have started to run away with it, I don't have a way to outpace the tempo at that point, it's time to go. Like understanding the tempo of your deck versus their deck in terms of that turn number, I think is very, very important across the board.
I think it's especially important in deck building, and that's one of the reasons that Chimimi / Hanzo has kind of popped up as the time spinning witch counter, is because you know that the Mosasaurus wants to come down on like when you have 3 stones, so depending on who goes first, it's just like when the time spinning witch opponent has 3 stones is when the Mosasaurus wants to come down, right? So being Chimimi, you know that you like you're saying, you know what turn they're going to do that, and because they're doing literally nothing for the 2 turns preceding that, like they're playing idle, they're playing beyond the threshold time, maybe they're like trying to do Dragon Lord's Breath to remove your pressure. By playing those aggressive 1-drops, by playing the fairy, by playing the hippo, that kind of stuff, you get to just chip at them for damage, and then when the pivotal turn comes around, turn 3, you've already put somewhere between like 10 and 14 damage on board just from your 1-drops. So on that turn 3, you just call Stone Pass and you say, you want to Moses me? I don't got no turn. I don't got no stones. I got some speeding stones that you can hit if you really want to. You want to distortion me? Like I got Lorites, I got fairy spells. And that's the turn where they also have stopped doing their development. They've stopped playing those idols. They've stopped playing their statues. They've stopped playing their threshold. That's where they want to start like removing your board and like dealing with your stuff. But if you've got Fair Spell mana open and you're also able to flash in Viola so they don't do anything, then you're really pressuring them down.
Can we talk about the angles at which Chimimi is beating Witch? Because I actually think that the Chimimi, how Chimimi is hitting Witch is a great example of how to approach this kind of deck building. So, so we look at Witch and we say, like, okay, this deck is probably doing the most objectively powerful thing. Distortion is extremely powerful. How do we beat Distortion? Well, there's only one way. It's green. We don't have dual stones, so our whole deck is green now. We have 4 Lorites in the deck. Time Spinning Witch is not really doing anything on its first few turns to develop, since the only way it really threatens the board is with Mosasaurus. So we're going to play a bunch of really powerful 1-drops. We're going to play Hippo. I think that's probably the best 1-drop play. We're going to play the Fairy that sacks and draws a card. It's a very high value 1-drop play. We just want as many 1-drops as possible because we want to play a card on 1 and then keep Lorite up for the rest of the game. All right, well, we put Hippo in. We need Beast. What's the best low-drop Beast? Probably Mike. All right, now we have the
Huge
Hippo.
Toad. It's Huge Toad. Come on. Don't
right, sure. There's Huge Toad, except then you have to pay 3 for Jiraiya. So are we willing to pay 3 against Time?
We don't need to play Jiraiya. We can just play Huge Toad. That's a 1-drop. It's a 4/4.
So you're playing this little Beast package here. All right, well, now we're a Wind deck. What's the most powerful Wind thing we can do? Well, we're already playing Lorite, so I guess we're playing Lorite 7 Disciples because that card happens to just be insane. All right, let's just fill out the rest of the green deck that we have here. We want to play it very slow. We're not going to play anything big for Time Spinning Witch to hit. They have Distortion of Time that's going to really wreck our board, so we need to play some amount of card advantage in it. And like, you just start, like, building on top of, like, they have this, so we're going to do this. They have this, we're going to do this. All right, what do we have? Does this line up well? And then eventually you stack up and you have a counter to something. And that's really how the Chimimi deck has sort of come to be. And how good it will be also depends on how well it can beat everything else. It just so happens that Wind is an extremely powerful deck out of the sideboard because it has a lot of random green hosers. And so, oh, wow, my deck that I built to beat Time Spinning, which also happens to have like a 50% against Keurig that goes into like an 80% game too. Oh, I just happen to like have game against Brunhild, even though it's negative, but it's not like completely unwinnable. Oh, okay, now this counter is something I can be comfortable bringing to a tournament. I'm going to play Chimimi and really hope to just hose those witches. And that's kind of
and like the basis of all that deck building literally came down to understanding that pivotal turn for Witch and what their strategy revolves around it. So like that pivotal turn being like turn 3, turn 4 for Witch, really based on like how they stick it. Really, it's turn 4 because that's kind of the earliest they can play the Mosasaurus. Is like, if that's their pivotal turn, then that actually informs all of the turns leading up to it in terms of what their ideal curve is. So then in knowing that, you know where the vulnerability lies. So like, if you're going up against a deck blind and you don't know what it's trying to do, you don't know where the weakness is. You don't know what its game plan is. You don't know what the tempo is. You don't know where the chinks in its armor or its dead turns are. And when I say dead turns, it's like what Brian has said. Not really establishing a board presence, not really like doing anything, just kind of like starting its engine a little bit. And like, decks do that at different times. So like, I would argue that Chamimi tried to like turn its engine on. Like, it tries to do that right out of the gate, but then the later the game goes, like, it's trying to make that pivotal turn kind of like early with its pressure. But
So,
then the later the game goes, it kind of like starts to peter out. Same with Keurig.
the Chimimi is the one I was talking about, where it goes one turn below what which wants to do. So like it builds a board the turn before which wants to go off. The other way to approach beating which would be going the other direction and playing like you featured quick cast Chimimi on your channel. I think that's an interesting way to approach which as well, where you just hold up Lorite every turn, you respond to everything they do, and then you have a bigger late game with Karura. This is another example. Is you can pinpoint weaknesses in the deck. So one of the Time Spinning Witch's big weaknesses is that it only has like 6 resonators that actually do damage. So if you're a control deck that has the ability to remove those while constantly holding up a Lorite, then that's great. Sadly, Wind doesn't really have any ways to do that outside of like a Ruin Story. But like if say a card existed that was like wind destroy target resonator or something like that, like we had Stoning and Wind, then that would be
ideas. You suck it.
But like that would be an insane way. That would just beat Witch, is that you could just hold it up on your draw step, Lorite anything they do, and then before you recover, Doomblade their Mosasaurus, and then we've pinpointed a way to beat Witch.
Right, so I would argue that, well, Wind doesn't have that removal right now, especially when you're talking about Quick Cast Chimimi, a card it kind of does a similar kind of thing in terms of helping you get around Mosasaurus, is actually Viola. Like, she gives flying, which is, like, it's not as good as removing the Mosasaurus, because you still have to deal with the Mosasaurus, but at the same time, like, if you're...
You mean for pushing damage, right?
Yeah, for pushing damage. So like the removal, in the sense of, does 2 kinds of pieces, would be to get the Mosasaurus off the board so it's no longer a threat, but also gives you an opening to be able to push damage. So
Right,
like,
so
Viola almost does that because it lets you push damage.
Right. There's a Chimimi that tries to push damage and win before Witch does anything, and then there's Quick Cast Chimimi, which really has no interest in doing any damage at all outside of Karura.
Yeah, pretty much. The Quick Cast Chimimi is typically like Karuras, Violas. It'll potentially still play Lorite 7 Disciples because we're playing Lorites. So it's like, that's its damage package, but the others that beyond that, it's like Ferris Spells, it's Winds of Salvation, and the whole idea with Winds of Salvation is like, if Time Spinning Witch fearing, because I've noticed this, and honestly I think that's an interesting playline for Quick Cast Chimimi to take, is Winds of Salvation, because what I've seen Time Spinning Witch players do is not early cast Distortion potentially against a green deck, because they don't want to see a unsupported, like, I can't answer that Viola, suddenly that's gone, you know what I mean? So like, Winds of Salvation I think is actually a weird counter to that, or a weird adjustment, because if a Time Spinning Witch hard casts, obviously it costs them less will, but if a Time Spinning Witch casts Distortion of Time and gets Winds of Salvation, it removes it from the game.
I don't like that play. I just, so my interpretation of the meta so far is that it's like entirely tempo based, and that's like one of the reasons Black isn't doing very well either, is because like that just like runs you out of cards immediately, but it doesn't matter because I draw a card every turn and I play it. Like it's just being as efficient with your mana as possible, and like when I play 1 mana Distortion and then you pay 3 mana to make sure that goes to the exile, like that just feels bad. It feels bad when, like, if I play Distortion of Time and you Viola it, I'm like, you know what, thank you, you just paid 2 mana and I paid 1. Like, I feel great about that. It's just,
this is getting extremely meta specific, and that's fine.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about that, that's totally cool.
So zooming back out, you're right, Brandon. So like, this is a clear example of like how we have it through the course of this discussion. We have identified a deck's main turn, and we've identified what a deck then does, what its turns, like 2 turns before and 2 turns after, start to look at. So then you can go from there and you can say, okay, so where is the vulnerability in that? And then in looking at that, one, if you're playing a mirror, that tells you that you need to try to shore up one of those 2 slots, or find a way to exploit it against the mirror. Or 2, when you're building a deck and thinking about a deck to do to counter it, you have to be able to take advantage of one of those 2 different vulnerabilities. So like this is super relevant in the sense that there are some decks that exist right now that just don't do that. They don't try to take care of those vulnerabilities. It seems like they're more stuck on just trying to do their own thing. I would say this in the sense of a deck, say, and I don't have a ton of experience with the deck, to be perfectly honest, but I would say Imul is a deck that at first build, I don't really know how it's trying to take advantage of one of those 2 slots that exist in the current format. At least with what's like we know of the current format. So like Frank, maybe you've experimented with black-white more than I have. I don't know if you've actually dealt with Imul at all, but it definitely feels like that it doesn't really have a way to there's not a really way to build it in such a way that you're trying to take advantage of those chinks in the armor.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like especially with Imul, it's just like I'm not certain what she's doing, and she's like more than other things that are trying to go there. She's very pigeonholed into being like having color issues.
Sure.
Like you're gonna have to invest a lot. Like you have to hope to get a good mix of card. Like you'd almost have to run statues, and you'd have to get the hope to get the right balance of getting them early enough you can get them down before you're in trouble, and then like getting them in the right, like not drawing anymore after that. Just like it doesn't feel really viable, and it's why like she had some like hype initially, and then like just immediately disappeared as the various like other black-white basically rune decks came onto the scene, because they were able to build on a different axis to actually balance multiple colors. Yeah. But
so just to be clear, we're all at the point in the format where we understand that you literally cannot beat Witch without Lorite and Wind, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to like kind of touch on that, because I think that like does create a very interesting thing with the meta, where like the current time splitting Witch list, right? The one that I won Minneapolis with is very generic. It will beat anything you throw at it that is not designed to beat time splitting Witch. It will beat anything that's not green blindfolded. It will still beat Chimimi sometimes. It will still beat the mirror sometimes. It will beat Gil. But now we're going into ARG, GP, Florida, right? And I feel like most people just know that you're not allowed to play these decks anymore. So like that's where I think that you really start, like people know that. That's why I want to talk about this topic, is like you have to beat time splitting Witch. Like that is the deck you have to beat. And on top of that, what decks are trying to beat time splitting Witch? It's only time splitting Witch, Gil, and Chimimi, because those are the only green decks. Like those are the only decks that you will see like past round 2 at this tournament. So then like
sure.
the entire meta has been like condensed down into 3 decks. So like when you're trying to think about how to build these 3 decks, obviously TSW is the boogeyman, but like you need to be able to beat time splitting Witch, but then still also not die to the aggressive green Chimimi, and also not get completely outvalued by the infinite Gil deck, that we might see.
Right, which I think is very interesting, because as much as it's really frustrating that I recognize that it is frustrating that it's blue and green pretty much just sitting at the top almost exclusively, it is kind of interesting that we have this kind of like pseudo combo stun deck, a hard control deck, and an aggressive deck still sitting at the top. So that's pretty cool.
Very clear about something, and maybe this is a little bit optimistic, but this isn't like Scheherazade format where everyone's going to play Witch. There are going to be and Gills there, and so if you have a deck that has game against Witch but isn't necessarily favored, but beats Chimimi and what was the other one?
Gil.
Gil. Well, that's not entirely embarrassing to bring. I mean, like you could definitely hope that the Chimimis and Gills are going to beat the Witches, and then you can beat them. That's why, I don't actually think Keurig is off the table. I don't actually think Brunhild is off the table. Yeah. And I know I just said that you need to play a Wind deck, and you do. I think if such a deck exists that can beat everything in the format, it's a Wind deck 100%, because you need to be Wind to beat Witch. But I don't think that means it's the only deck to play. Like I think that there are other options.
Yeah, that'd be like in the results we saw in Minneapolis. Like we didn't see a ton of them top 8, but we saw like several black-white Brunhilds, and like once you expand the top 16, We saw that list several places because its matchup against Gil is excellent. Its matchup against Chimimi is like favored, and so like not necessarily something like great, but it's like it has all the tools to make it really hard for Chimimi to actually take the match. And so we saw it do well there because there was a large portion, and like it's also just really good if you're decent at piloting it in the mid-range mirrors. And so you were in a field where if you didn't hit Witch or you hit Witch a low enough number of times, you could really do well.
And I think that's, again, that comes down to those decks, I think, have figured out how to fight, not necessarily against Witch, because they recognize that, but I think they've found those pivotal turns and those pivotal moments in that tempo, that style of Gil, of Chimimi, and they've found their way in deck building to kind of, again, capitalize on those weak points. Because I don't think, especially in this meta, I don't think that there's a deck that I can say for sure has like a 100% perfect, unbreakable armor. Like every deck I think in this format has some form of weakness or at least a vulnerability that can be potentially exploited. And I think that's just important for people to learn how to see those and build around them. And I just don't think that's something that everyone's doing.
I think it's a bitter shame that TSW's weakness is exactly one card in one color, and I think that that's kind of bad design.
Oh, sure.
It is nice that it exists.
I'd like to broaden this a little bit from just like TSW and what should you do as TSW or specifically to beater, just because like we won't have this format forever, and just like be this, like this applies to more than just like what should you do, like what should you pick for an event.
Sure.
Because if you're like, say you have let's say you have a pet deck, like let's say you are a diehard Brunhild player or a diehard Keurig player, even if you know like going into it that you have these certain bad matchups, this can like it's still important to like understand this topic, because like even if you're like going in, you're like, I'm going to be playing Keurig down there, it doesn't matter. This will still improve your ability to play your deck. So if you understand like how, you know, say Witch or the Chimimi or the Lorite is working, or Gil is working, and like this is sort of like what Jeremy was getting at with like, you know, like playing it a little bit and figuring out this X turn. It's really figuring out how the deck functions. So you're more than just like, oh, I play this and like they're reacting a little bit like this. You can start to see how what they're doing, because they're also playing in response to you. So you can see how what they're doing, like what it says about what they have. And
that's a topic that we are going to talk about in more detail at a later date, because there is a lot of different elements to that.
And so you can start to like reach different lines. You can start to reach different lines of play that you might not normally take, because in this matchup, like once you have this good understanding of like what makes your opponent's deck good, what makes your deck bad, or their deck bad in the matchup, you start to adjust how you play to do even better. And this like applies if you're the dominant deck as well. Like if you know like, oh, I win this matchup almost all, like, you know, 70% of the time, and you know the 30 an easy example for Witch is like part of the reason it's really good against these black decks is like Witch's loss case is like, once you're used to playing it, you realize is Witch's loss case is pretty much exclusively a combination of Glint and Thought Control into a Ray that goes unchecked, so that all of a sudden many of their stumbling blocks are gone while they're under this very short clock that's like didn't cost your opponent much to get down. And so all of a sudden as a Witch player you realize, oh, I mulligan a little harder for Dragonlord's Breath, and that both recovers me cards to insulate me against Glint, and then also prevents that early threat. And so all of a sudden a match that you're, say, 70% to win, you can bump up another 10% by knowing how to play it.
Sure. I will address a comment really quick that's in the chat. So Lachlan Swan is saying one of the reasons why everyone wouldn't play Time Spinning Witch is the price point of acquiring TSW. The only reason it's not higher like a Time Spinning Witch meta, or like a Sherry meta. He says if TSW was a generic ruler and not gated behind a prior price point due to being a 3-box promo, that it'd be played 100% more. So I will say this. In other countries, that might still be the case. Time Spinning Witch within the last maybe month and a half has absolutely flooded the U.S. markets.
I put some up on the market, and I couldn't get them for $30.
Yeah, they are averaging between $15 to $20 a piece right now in terms of being able to pick them up.
For point of reference, Welser was like in the 40, like Welser and IU were in the $40 to $50 range, as late as 3 to 4 months after their set's release. Time Spinning Edge is a very inexpensive ruler.
She's like 15 to 20 right now.
My locals got sent 8 of them with their promos, and the guy that runs my locals.
Well, we lost Brandon.
Oh, he's just been like a spinning ball for me for like the past 10 minutes. I can see him on the YouTube video. But anyway, so I do think there is some merit to Time Swingers being kind of expensive because we haven't seen expensive cards in Forcible in a long time.
We're getting there. I heard you like full out look of corruptions at 25.
Mosasaurus is like $10. Time Stones unfoiled are like $8 to like I think $12.
Fair spells are back up to 8.
Card you need 4. Fair spells are 8. Like this is like actually a over $100 deck in Forcible. I don't remember the last time I spent more than $100 on a Forcible deck, but we're living there. But going back to what Frank was saying about like how there are like decks that have game events Time Switch, like these are also decks that like it's important like when you're. This is maybe like going too down the rabbit hole. When you are like looking to beat a certain deck, there's a lot of merit in like taking a look at that deck and saying, okay, how are people going to beat me? And then how can I like anti-meta for that? Because I've been looking a lot of Time Swing, which like over the past couple of weeks, I still think the deck is super fun and it's like really interesting. But I was testing against like a green-black deck last night. And I'm sure you guys saw that the Atlanta States, Tyler Wilson played green-black Hanzo. He didn't play Speaking Stones, but the deck that I played against was playing Speaking Stones. So the guy goes Ray turn 1, and I'm like, yeah, like plays Ray. He's got Speaking Stone, got a Black Stone. Turn 3 calls another Speaking Stone. So he's got Speaking Stone, Black Stone, Speaking Stone, and I bounce his Ray. And then I just I'm confusing my story. Anyway, he doesn't have a Ray, but he's playing this green-black deck, and I play a Mosasaurus on turn 3, and I tap down his Black Stone, and I still tap down 2 of my stones, just because I know that having this 15-10 on the board is exactly what I need. Like when he's got that many Speaking Stones, it's not going to be an issue of like. I know he's a slower deck because the deck that Tyler played Ruin Stories and Winds of Salvation, and it was.
What happened to you, Ryan?
What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
I ended up winning the game actually. Like this Mosasaurus just went unchecked. Like I tapped down 2 of my stones. I sat there on 3 mana next turn, but like I understood like in the slower matchups, like it doesn't matter like tapping down stones because they just have way too many ways to protect against that. He probably had a Lorate, but he didn't feel the need to cast it because I was targeting 2 of my own stones, but like just didn't have the answer to me putting down this 15-10 and then like leaving up 2 green stones to protect it. And it's just like recognizing like what those matchups are trying to do to you and then saying, okay, I can't Mosasaurus you, but it's a 15-10 and it needs to come down on turn 3 because I need to hit you in the face starting on turn 3.
Well, and that combines with the fact that like you hadn't really stated it, but you also knew because he's going slower, and because the nature of like what the black-green decks are trying to do puts heavy limitations on like how much free space they have, you know that if you don't do anything, you're going to have a draw-go game for several turns. And so you doing something, you not doing anything simply gives him more time to expend discard spells against you and puts you into that late game where all of a sudden you're pitting your threats against theirs at the same time rather than being like, oh, let me start you. Okay, now I have Mosasaurus. And so now you're forced to react to that. So you have to either tap out, in which case you can be vulnerable to me following up like the next turn with an actual like your tapped out distortion of time, or just like you tap out to handle this, I land another one when I tap down 2 stones or any sort of thing.
That's correct.
Or even if they have it, like the floor for you is simply they exchange 1 for 1 on your card, and you're both low on resources because you're down 2, they're down 1, but then they spent 2 more to take care of your Mosasaurus. Like the floor is acceptable enough that you realize the line of play has merit, and then there's a lot of cases where it's simply, oh, well now they're hit for 15.
Yeah. So this is again, I think we're starting to get a little hyper focused on the current meta.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's what it's. I mean, there's a WGPQ in 2 weeks, so like that totally makes a lot of sense. But I think a lot of this stuff is topics that next week our main topic is in game and in preparing for testing, how understanding how the decks you're playing against work and being able to get a read on those play lines and read on what your opponent has and how that can give you, like Frank was saying, how that can give you that extra 10%, how that can give you that extra 15%. Because I think there's a lot of different elements that speak into it that we don't have enough time to talk about today. So that's why we're going to be bringing it up next week. So be sure to check it out. subscribe and hit that bell so that you know when we go live next week, so we can talk about getting a read on your opponent in game and setting yourself up to be able to get a read on your opponent in your testing experience, because I think that is actually something that sets a lot of players apart from one another in terms of the skill gap, is watching a player who there's moments, and I'll tease it like this. There have been moments where I've been watching someone play, like I've been watching Ryan or Brandon or Frank play because I watch it on the stream, or just watching them play when we're hanging out. And there's these moments where like it totally feels like I see you guys click on, you know, what your opponent has. Like you just like, Ryan, you talk it out loud. Like, you say it out loud all the time when you're playing. You're saying, well, if you have this, and you probably have that. Like, you talk it out. Like, but, like, I've watched you guys do that, and in those moments, like, my confidence in your ability to win that game, like, skyrockets just from as a witness. Like, I can see you guys do it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, he's like, laser focused. Like, he knows what's happening. And I'll say this again from the backside of that is some people that I've known who have gotten into the game or who are trying to improve will come up to me and go, Jeremy, like watching a pro play, I think Josh Patton, who's in the chat, has actually talked about this, like watching a pro play, a pro, quote unquote, and like the amount of time they spend information gathering and like thinking about it. Josh, I think, can also attest that the reason, like when he started to do that more or better understood how to do it, he saw his win rate go up. So I think that's actually a very conscious way that we can actually improve win rates. I think you guys need to learn about it, and so that's going to be a huge thing for next week. However, I do want to talk about it. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
So we were worried, like, we've been focusing too much on the current meta. So a really good example of how this can help you, especially if you're the type of person who wants to come from nowhere with like the spicy deck that suddenly wins. I have a really good example from you, although you may be slightly sad to know that it was a pro team that brought forth the spicy deck. But let's shift back to the
don't say tree.
What was the name of the set?
Don't say tree.
No, second set of Rhea Cluster. I'm blanking on the name. Advent of the Team and King. So at ADK's release, we're going into ARG in Atlanta, or not ARG, a Grand Prix in Atlanta, and so the two of the biggest known decks are like a red-green Fair deck and a blue-green Fair deck. Red-green was this very low to the ground. It's a red deck that's using fair stuff to get more resources and go a little bit wider, so it can be a combination aggressive deck that goes wide. And this blue-green one is a very control deck where it's using the very cheap elf stuff to get it both extra resources so that it can start holding up better answers and reach that late game where it's, oh, my bigger late game takes over sooner, and also have value to let it turn the corner more sharply once it reaches that point. And then it was looking at that, you have to realize that, oh, one of these decks is going very fast, is going to do a lot very early, so I can't, nothing expensive is going to let me interact with them. And this other one is going to have access to answers with lots of mana to use the good answers very late. So I also can't use anything too big. And what was identified was this black-green list by Brandon and his team, where we can use a combination of this very inexpensive black interaction and maybe one or two good threats to combine with we're losing the red threats, so we're not quite as fast as the red-green Fair list. We still have this reasonably fast clock and these meaty threats, but we have both these inexpensive things to pair with them to take out the good closing cards like the Maribels from the red deck, and to sort of pick apart for very cheap before they can get their good answers online from the blue-green deck. And that's a list where it's very much cognizant of this is what all these things are doing, realizing what their strengths and weaknesses are, and finding a combination of cards that hits that gap.
Yep, absolutely.
And that deck was also just all the best cards in the format, which was pretty nice. It was identifying that Final Battle happens to be broken. Nameless Mist was very good when Otherworld Dreams and Severing Winds were very good. So I mean that was really.
You look at that deck and it's what is it? Was it 4 Final Battle or was it 3 maybe?
It was 3 Final Battle, yeah.
3 Final Battle, 4 Nameless Mist, 4 Otherworld Dreams, 4 Severing Winds. I honestly believe that was the best deck in the format once they correctly evaluated Trueblade and then forced Lumia out of the tournament or out of the format, because that was
You know what's so funny is in hindsight how good the Lumia, this is totally off topic. I think we're closing down here, so just really quick off topic. We had 4 Trueblade originally, but then we were like, oh, you know what though? Fair's the best deck, and it's not great against Fair, so we're gonna drop this down to 2. And then they show up with this Lumia deck that like literally can't beat Trueblade, and we're just like, are you kidding me?
We played Rapid Growth so that we could protect our Sacred off. But I remember Alex, like, I showed up to the tournament, he's like, what are you on? I'm like, I'm on Lumia. What do you think I'm on? I'm Ryan Miles. He's like, okay, what's your team on? And I'm like, I don't know. And then he finds out everyone's on Lumia. He's like, you guys know that Otherworld Dreams is a card. Like, how are you going to resolve a card that costs 7 mana? And then I beat him on stream, and I'm like, that's how, Alex. That's how.
There was some satisfaction in commentating that match.
Yeah.
The Trueblade, I'm so mad about that. That was a bad minute call, by the way. We're going to talk about how to beat decks. This is a good example.
I can't believe you didn't sideboard him at least. Like, you knew that I would play it. The disrespect.
It was so bad in the Fair Mirror. We were just like, everyone's going to play Fair.
So I do want to point out something interesting and just kind of gather thoughts. I think we have, this is just real quick before we jump into our game for the evening. So we were talking a little bit before about card price. Force of Will is seeing a resurgence in the secondary market. We are seeing cards start to really hold their value. Like you said, Lorite Seven Disciples sitting at like 15s for the non-foils. Mosasaurus Full Arts and Look Up Corruption Full Arts going for like 25s.
Full arts, though.
Like the Full Arts, sure. So you don't have to bling out your deck. But even like the normal ones, like normal Mosasaurus is like, hello. Normal Mosasauruses are still like 10s, you know. Fair Spells Commons are back up to 8s. Like, we're seeing value return, and it's not necessarily like spike value. This comes from, again, Ryan, you and I both played Yu-Gi-Oh! We remember having to spend $300 on like 7 cards. Like, it was an expensive lifestyle, and we're definitely not there by any means, and I don't think we ever will get there. But what are your thoughts about the fact that we are kind of seeing this resurgence in the secondary market and kind of what this means for, I think what we have been seeing is the recovery and the growth of Force of Will, like the resurgence, the renaissance, almost. Like,
so my instinct is to say that, oh, we're back in a 1-deck format, therefore everyone needs to buy all these cards. But that's just not true. Like, the fact that there are, like, non-time spinning witch cards, like Jeanne d'Arc has been $15 for fucking a year. I don't know why, but that card is completely unplayable right now. We have no dual stones. You have to be an all-black deck to play that card. You cannot play Jeanne d'Arc unless you're like black-white Brunhild, and then like, okay, you don't even like, you can even play white Brunhild, and like you don't need to play Jeanne d'Arc. But that card is still like $15 on foil. Blows my mind. I just think that people like the rare cards in the game are picking up on value, and I think that like there are still a lot of people that just buy cards, even if we don't have a lot of people coming up to tournaments. I could not fathom the reason for that, but I still think there are a lot of people playing
Life-Severing Blade. Someone's telling me.
Life-Severing Blade's a rare, right? I think it's probably $5 at most.
The Lancelot, the Machines Lancelot is like $8 or $9, even though it's completely unplayable.
So it'll be playable. Like that card's on like a thin wire, where I could see that card actually just becoming playable at like that.
You mean when they print another? You mean when they print another set with like 1 or 2 more good machine cards?
Yeah.
No,
that's that.
Really, if Lorite was a blue card, Machines is the best deck in format. I actually fully believe that.
You mean if Erendite just hit all triggered abilities?
Common Life-Severing Blade sitting at $750.
You're out of your mind. You're lying.
Life-Severing Blade Full Art sitting at $12.
You are. Stop. You can't tell lies on the internet, Jeremy. It's not allowed.
Like, I'd like to make one note on this, and this is sort of like, at first, like to some people who like maybe got into Force of Will because it's a little cheaper, or like have enjoyed the fact that it's a little cheaper because it's like basically let them stretch their dollar further. At first, like this can be a little scary because it feels like it's suddenly like you're worried that you're going to get priced out of the game. But like understand, like cards having no value or almost no value is still like very bad for you, and that while them being cheap means it's easier for you to pick up all this stuff, it means that for the vendors who provide you this stuff, there's no reason to provide any of it. Like there wasn't a secondary market. Like that's why in previous seasons it was so hard to get vendors at events, because it wasn't worth the money to get like. It was hard for them to break even going out to an event and just selling out their booth and then buying valuable stuff they should hypothetically be able to resell.
It has been tricky to convince stores to crack boxes for singles. Now, Whether that takes one more set of having this solid growth of card impact or two more sets, like I think we're pretty close to the fact of where stores might start cracking boxes for singles. Now, ultimately, that does base on whether they have an online presence versus they have a store in person. But like the fact that stores are even at a position where they might start thinking about it, I think is good, and I think I'm very glad that we're getting back to that spot.
Can finish that point, because there's an end step to that. Like that, what I gave you is not a reason why it's better for you. So the reason why this is better for you is that to be able to play the game, you need places that are hosting events, and the incentive for those places hosting events is the fact that they get to at least attempt to sell you products. So if there's no value in that, you end up with these places where like locals have like free, like, you know, like say you get a promo if you show up, but they don't do anything else, and they're not like trying to get any players. And that's because for them, all they're getting out of this is selling booster packs. So they need to go at it the lowest risk way possible, which is invest nothing. They sell the boxes and packs they get, and other than that, they're not incentivizing anything to draw more players to keep the value for you playing. The more like secondary market value is, the better things are for your organizers, who will then give you something better to play with and play for. Like,
absolutely.
It's this symbiotic relationship where like it costs you a little bit to put in, but then you're getting more back out of it than you put in.
Just to hopefully put the nail in this coffin, it's a really good thing. Like, obviously the way that they're doing the GPs this year is like a cost saving measure, because they're allowing stores to host them. They're no longer fronting the venue cost. You know, like they're having like the popular stores host the GPs, but at the same time, when the value of the market's going up, like they want to host tournaments, like stores want to host tournaments and like bring players into the store to buy cards. And when the company is able to say, hey, here's a paid invite to Japan to throw on top of your tournament that you're hosting, have fun, like that's actually a really good thing to even more incentivize players or stores to purchase cards for sale and also host tournaments. So
one of my local stores came up to me the other day and said, "Hey Jeremy, what do we have to do to try to earn a WGPQ?" Like, okay, let's start talking about that. And like the fact that stores are starting to ask that question, and like I say it's a renaissance, but like, man, it's the golden age. But you're right. Golden age of Force Will. Let's do it. But
let's get to game time, because
let's
otherwise
get to
we
game
won't have time for it.
Yeah,
for sure. So today we are playing. I'm going to bring it up on screen over here. We are playing Scribble.io. Scribblio. And so you at home are going to get to watch as we goof around and play Scribblio, which is a list of how many words?
102.
102 Force of Will related words that we are going to get to potentially draw from.
You're not in my room.
What?
Click the link I sent you, Jeremy.
It's in the Discord.
It's in the Discord now?
Yes.
It's
in the call that we are currently in.
It's in the call that we are currently.
Oh.
I thought you sent it in the Facebook chat too. I haven't entered it yet.
I sent it to both.
Okay. I'm in. I'm trying to join.
You're letting them behind the curtains.
I get an ad. Sorry for the ad. I say we don't, because otherwise it's going to take us forever.
That's true.
Invite specific honored patrons. Any $20 patrons of Jeremy.
$20 patrons. So okay.
All right, you guys ready?
Let's play. Okay, so this is 100. This is 100 Force of Will related questions, and we're gonna see who can get the most points, and you guys can join us.
Game is starting.
Here we go. Oh, I get to choose.
I'm not gonna look at the stream.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Ready?
I'm closing out the stream too.
Here we go. Here we go.
All right. 7 letters. Is that?
Done.
Damn it! You can't say it. I like to type it.
This is my really bad drawing, and then.
Okay, good. This is harder than I thought it would be. What have we done? At the top of the screen, it tells you how many letters it is, guys. So it's 7 letters.
Oh.
It's all one word. Yeah. Frank didn't know. If you never played before, it's not obvious. What is Jeremy, this is impressive for sure. I just have no idea what it is.
What is even happening here?
Is it a rook? Dragon. 7. Oh boy.
Um,
I'm just gonna type in forcible words now that have 7 letters.
let's see.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think.
Middle letter's a P. The fourth letter's a P.
Jeremy, we need more detail.
I'm trying. I'm trying to think of something.
I'm just glad there's like a YouTube chat that we can go check later and see how much they're making fun of him, or if he's like, "What is this word?"
Or how much they're making fun of
Yeah,
us.
somebody got it. Josh Patton freaking got it. I can't.
You can see it on your stream.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else to draw here.
Baby is
G.
GP.
I can't
No.
I can't freaking. I can't draw words. Let's see. Hold on.
You can draw. What is? Oh boy.
Hold on. I'm trying to like.
I think this is probably really good, and I think I'm just dumb.
Yeah, we're just idiots. Heck.
Griffin! It was two killing stones.
Oh,
It was 2 killing
I thought
stones.
they were baby chickens. I really
It was-
did.
No.
I was trying to draw the
man.
killing stones.
All right.
That was good. That was good. Yeah, we're just.
All right, good start.
All right.
I was trying to I was like, I can't draw this thing.
Oh crap! It auto picked me. Okay.
Okay,
I'm
6
gonna-
letters.
All right. I'm just gonna do some of this nonsense because we got a boy, and he's gonna be dude. He's gonna. All right. How do I show this? It's got a little hat. You know. He's got a big red nose.
Oh, it's got it. Yes.
Yeah. And he's just on fire all over the place. It's fucking.
So good.
Wait, what?
And it's just fire
Big
everywhere.
red nose.
It's easy.
And he's also, let's see, he's got a what else does he do? He's also.
Oh, something with R at the end. Oh, got it. There we go. Thank you. I just needed the R at the end.
Dragon.
I like the hat. I like the funny hat.
That was good. That was good.
I feel like it helps to narrate sometimes. Not explicitly illegal, but.
That's just, I should have done that with my. Here's some feathers and some killing stones.
Oh, yeah, some killing stones.
Alrighty, boys.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that 9 letters?
Brendan just get Valentina just off the bat.
Oh wait, I spelled that wrong. Brunhilde. Oh my god, what is the name of this card?
Hold on, I got it.
It's a giant snake.
Wait.
No, it's green though. He made it green on purpose, and that's red.
It's the sacred
Red.
one.
Oh fuck it.
Oh my god, no way.
It's got to be the sacred.
Playing along. Holy shit. I didn't mean to say that out loud. Good luck.
Spell it.
I can't believe I got it right my first try.
There we go.
It was when everyone reached and then couldn't spell it. I got told you failed like 3 times in spelling
I
this
really
card.
thought it was Huang Long with like an O, and I spelled it right the first time.
Okay, here we go.
Alright.
7 letters. 7 letters. What?
I related the whole image.
Oh no. That was good.
There we go.
That was so dumb.
I'm apparently awful at this game. Holy cow.
Oh my god. That was so
Oh.
funny.
That's a good one, Brandon.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Whew.
Come on.
That was.
Frank's
The word
like
was
thinking of
right.
red green cards.
Here we
It's just
go.
a green
Round
card with a
2.
man. Like it's gotta be low right? Oh no.
Jeez.
Alright,
Okay.
Alright, what you got?
Alright.
Why is it not giving me
5.
my color?
Damn it. Oh, that's 6 letters. Good job, Ryan. Shit. Wow, God. Now I'm the idiot. What?
You can do it, Ryan.
Oh, Jesus.
Ryan, I believe in you. I feel like this is pretty good, Brandon. Don't you
I
think?
think it's really good. I think I'm just an absolute monkey.
Okay. Why doesn't he show me the word when I've won? I kept typing stuff.
Oh, it's like it takes another turn. Oh, God, this is something for sure. I mean, I thought I was.
It was light!
Oh, my God. I was thinking white, and I'm like, nah, that's how the H goes. What am I doing? Okay.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
How many rounds did you pick? It's 4. Okay.
4 rounds.
Holy crap! What is this word?
It's like,
What?
I thought that would go a lot better. Okay. All right, we got this card.
oh. Got it.
What?
Thank
Even?
you.
Yeah, easy.
What?
That was a great game, God. Why don't we do this every
I
week?
really tried on this one. Let me tell you.
I have no idea.
I think you will. Once you see it, you'll be like, this was genius, Ryan. You're absolutely
This is
genius.
a great drawing.
I have no idea.
Thumbs up.
Oh, damn it. All right. I thought that was good.
7. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, that was solid. Well done.
Man. I can't
Jeez
draw.
Louise.
I have to resort to tactics like this to get my message across.
All right, Frank.
I believe in Frank's drawings.
Yeah, Frank's drawing.
4?
Why isn't that blue? Make it blue.
I hate when it does that. Blue, green, spinny lightning hammer.
Got it.
What the?
Hell? It's not keys. What?
This is an abstract one. You got to look at it very abstractly.
All right.
Good drawing. It's a good drawing.
I'm just really bad at guessing. Let me tell you. Wow.
I don't know. What the fuck? Oh, got it. Okay, that's solid.
It's an abstract one. I just drew the card arts. Self-abstract.
Jeez
When you said
Louise.
seal, I was
Getting
like,
hosed here.
holy moly. Bremont is destroying us.
You say
Yeah.
you're getting hosed here, but I haven't been out of last place the whole time. Shut your face.
Jesus Christ.
Nailed it.
What?
I feel like an athlete you can just guess because of the color of the person. Yeah. Frank's figured out my strategy. Give him a tail. Give him a tail. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking
What? Oh,
I will
Okay,
admit,
got
it's
it.
way more fun when where it's just watch the drawing add to it.
Oh, boy.
okay.
Alright, Jeremy.
Jeez. Okay.
Yellow. Alright.
The white card.
10? 10 letters? The actual foot. What the hell?
Cost 1.
Looks like it.
What?
Holy moly.
A 1-mana white card. Is this supposed to be a word where the type is?
No, it's not a 1 man. It's just a card. Like, what's the word for a card? Cardboard. Damn it. Yeah, Resonate is a good guess. Nice. Human.
Oh, fuck. Whoops. Hold on. I gotta trash it. I was drawing the wrong thing.
Jeez.
Yeah, my bad.
Oh, halfway
Whoops.
Uh,
How am I gonna do this? I picked the.
Oh, it's 9. All right. 9 letters, not 10.
yeah, Jeremy, the strong's not so good so far.
Yeah, I know. I'm recognizing.
You're really good, dude. Hit him with the thumbs down.
Alright, we got cardboard.
Okay. We got chicken.
A gnome. We got a
That's
gnome.
a chicken. Okay, I accept no. I'm following. Yep. Dark.
Darkstone.
Oh! Nailed it.
Are you kidding me?
I thought it was Resonator when I first picked it, and then I get halfway through and I'm like, oh wait, shit.
Jesus.
Should have chosen
This is
Guire.
garbage.
Just trash in the bottom corner. Okay.
What? Got it.
Thank you, Brandon. I thought I was doomed.
Wait, what? 4 letters?
I don't know if the other side's the best, but
I have no idea. Something forcible related 4 words.
4 letters, yeah.
4 letters.
Ryan, I really think your right side there is like could have been a little better.
I cannot draw for the life of me. What do you want from me?
No, but I mean, like you could have looked at a crescent.
Moon?
Why would you do
What
a
the f- Crescent moon! Why not do a crescent moon?
Oh boy. I once I get in the zone, man, I can't back out of my focus. I was in there.
Jeez Louise, sitting over here in last place. Gosh. Looks like a sun and cookies.
Oh god. Yeah, I'm very left-brained. I'm very right. Whichever brain does.
What is this drawing?
This is phenomenal. Is what this is. This is some fucking red bullshit. This is Kyrie and Lucas. Damn it.
I don't even know what that is. It's a
I can't even tell anything about this.
Yeah, I can't tell anything.
All right, so there's.
Oh!
Nope.
God, I was so certain it was that.
6 letters. So there's a bird-looking thing, and then it's turning.
I don't think
into
the
a
red
man.
is relevant.
I hope that's a bird-looking thing. Maybe it's a plant.
Bird. It's like.
Let's be clear.
It's
This half and this half have nothing to do with each other.
Different things. Damn it.
It's still only 5 letters.
Damn it.
Red into green?
Oh,
Oh! Yeah! There we go. Thank you.
VI.
Let's flesh out this one. This drawing is.
You can just do a trash bag in the corner.
That trash is the whole drawing, though, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Oh man.
I don't have any idea.
Why am I unable to think of
This is
a
a good
word?
one. This is a good one, Frank.
Different then.
Yeah.
The bottom one was what made it for me.
Yeah, I just can't think.
Sylvia!
God, that's so good. That's so good.
Drag it into human, red into green.
That's
good.
Hold up, there's more than just a human there. There's a wrecking ball chained to your arm.
All right.
I drag it into human, I red into green, like it's all there. I just don't know. Like every single waifu lover in chat is just.
Hold on, D.
Damn it.
No.
Oh. Damn it. What? Oh, that's not. What is
Thank
this?
you very much. That was good. Mike Rance, if you're watching, well done. Well done.
Oh,
free points for me.
That's good. All right, that's fucking. That was some.
That's meta. That's meta.
Holy shit.
You gotta know Jeremy pretty well here.
Yeah. Oh man, that was.
Alice is my daughter's name. Oh, here we go. Round 4 of 4.
Knowledge paying up. Holy moly.
Oh,
Jeremy on the
jeez.
word. Why didn't I draw a crescent moon? Who allowed me to function? I like thought about it too, and I just got there. I'm like, yeah, it's time to draw the moon. The moon's a circle. It's the orb. It's a sphere. There's no other way the moon exists.
Another gnome. So many gnomes.
This is fucking beautiful. Let me just say.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just behind you. Holy shit.
And then there's...
Very fat.
He's trying to... Yeah, he's very fat.
Wait.
Frank is like right there. Oh my god, he's got it. He'll get it.
Nope, not gonna get it.
Oh man.
Oh, come on.
I
Look
thought that was
at
pretty okay.
I thought it was good. I thought it was good.
Mikage.
Frank has the
So-
vampire. That's why I thought he was gonna get it. Oh boy. Jeez. Crap. Okay. Why did I do this to myself?
Oh, jeez.
Jesus
2
Christ,
4-letter
alright.
words.
This is bad, but we'll make it work, and we'll just. Oh fuck.
Oh,
Okay.
what have you done?
Round two.
Yellow away. That was a good guess, though, Frank.
Make sure we
Wrong
get
card
there. We
name.
go. There we go. All right, we're in there. Click, 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 click. All right, that's what I got. That's my beautiful art.
What? Paradon from Steven Universe.
Oh Jesus.
I don't know what's going on in this image at all.
I was trying to wind will. Oh. Wait, what? Oh!
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 Yeah!
Yes! There we go! I got it!
Why am I?
Woo! Depthwood.
Brain is struggling. Oh Jesus.
Woo!
Yes,
Nice!
that's how that card exists in my brain. So you guys have all gotten a wonderful glimpse into how I see the world, and why card art does not matter to me that much because my brain is just impossible. to
Okay,
comprehend.
hold on. We're gonna go this way. We're gonna do wild.
Break and pick. It's
We're
like
gonna
a
have fun, my friends.
Oh,
boy.
no.
4 words.
Four letters.
Here, we'll give you guys a start because otherwise you won't understand this.
Okay, dad 2. How many dads are there? That's got a lot of legs. That
What?
has a lot, or a lot of nipples.
Camel.
One of the two.
Dad T.O.?
There we go.
What the
Yeah, those are
actual-
words.
Yeah, dad 2. The thing with a bunch of legs.
This isn't Force of Will related. You
Nailed
have
it.
to know the
Yes,
mythology.
it is.
Nailed
not-
it.
What?
Relevant to the mythology here. That's the next
Yeah,
one.
that's his noble steed. His watchdog, one might say. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, fine. We'll start making it easy.
You got 6
Something's
seconds.
watchdog?
When someone gets it right, like the time gets cut in half.
Who's... I have no idea. Loki?
Logo.
So
Okay.
that was an 8-legged horse.
That was
giant wolf,
garbage.
a
That was
snake.
garbage.
I got
You
it.
say that despite the fact that Ryan got it before I got to a wolf.
I did. I had no idea what the drawing was, but there was a 4-letter word and the 3rd letter was
Okay,
Loki, or
it's a
K.
7. It's a 7 cost.
Oh, fucking easy.
There we go. I was right behind you. I just misspelled it the first time.
Use them points. Oh god, I'm still 800 points behind you. Jesus, that was not close.
Hey! There you
That
go,
was not-
Brandon!
That was not close at all. Brandon is a disgusting legend.
That was super fun. I
Also, you
thoroughly
say that
enjoyed
was
that.
awful, Jeremy. That was how I felt every time one of you drew anything.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's fair. It's a fair statement. That was super fun. Hope you guys in the chat enjoyed it. That was a great idea. Maybe we'll play that again next week. Pull out
That was
some
a
different
pretty
words
good,
or
yeah.
something. So we'll see who can draw some terrible things next week. I do really enjoy the Alice. that was
yeah,
that was top
was
notch.
top-notch.
Which is really funny because like you could just draw like the foul character Alice, but you decided to go like my
I thought
personal
that-
route.
I literally thought your daughter was an easier thing to draw.
It was
We need
pretty
to get
great.
like special guest Taylor Prince on here or something. Like
Yeah, to drop professionally for us.
Absolutely obliterate us or something.
Oh,
yeah, but
So-
we'll be able to guess her stuff, and then she won't be able to guess our terrible fucking drawings. So we might actually have an advantage.
maybe we'll have Taylor come.
So
Yeah.
that game is very fun if it's all like people who are good at drawing or all people who are bad at it. Once you start mixing them, it feels bad.
I think once you mix it, as long as you're a little
I have played a different version of this where you make drawings and you present a bunch of words, and then everyone combines them to make T-shirts. And the good drawings are just like unfairly unbalanced. And I have a friend who's good at art.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. It has been wonderful talking with you tonight. We will be back again next week, again talking more about the concept of getting a read on your opponent's deck in a match and understanding how to learn what a read of a deck is outside of a match in your testing. As always, it has been a pleasure having you guys in the chat. If you want to support what we do, go ahead and check the links down below. And until next time, this has been myself, Jeremy Franklin, and I have been joined by Ryan Miles, Brandan Bremont, and Frank Klosser. And we will see you guys next week. Have a good one, everybody.
See you in Florida.